Record. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Gestalt Get-Together, your speech therapy PD podcast for discussing Gestalt processing, echolalia, special interests, play, and music. My name is Corinne Zmoos, and I'm a speech language pathologist who works with Gestalt language processors. Now, before we get started, it is important for me to share my financial disclosures. I'm the owner of Crescendo Communication, a private practice in Baltimore, Maryland. I offer coaching and consultation. I am a paid speaker, and I do receive compensation for episodes of the Gestalt Get-Together, as does my guest for tonight. This course is offered for zero point 0.1 ASHA CEUs. If you're here for the live recording, please make sure that you get credit by heading over to SpeechTherapyPD to complete the quiz before the end of the day. If you're listening later and you want CEUs for this, you should use my code Gestalt33 to get a discount on your annual membership. For this episode, we do have the chat and the Q&A open for you live listeners. Please feel free to put your questions in, but we won't be answering them until the end of the episode. And thanks in advance. Now, for tonight, one of my favorite things to tell families is that music is the vehicle and language is the passenger. You could also argue that books could be a really good vehicle for language, and they are. Now, musical language, whether it be by your voice or through media, stands out against the noise and taps into long-term memory and reward systems really well. Now, narratives, we see again and again, they play a powerful role in a GLP's ability to connect with information, expand understanding of relationships, sequence symbols, and absorb templates of how the world can be experienced. Now, when music and books are combined, especially those that have this irresistible musical math and special interests, you may see a GLP take their language to the next level. And that's why I wanted to have tonight's guest here on the podcast. So who is Rachel? After graduating with an undergrad degree in communication disorders and a master's in music therapy, Rachel C. MA MTBC became interested in how language and music intersect, connect, and enhance each other. Starting in 2011, Rachel opened her private practice in Austin, worked for 11 years in the public school special education classrooms in St. Louis, and now owns and operates the Singable Book Club. And finally, before we welcome Rachel to the podcast, I need to say that we are both therapists, but we are not your therapists. Please do not take any of what we say to be formal therapeutic or medical recommendations for your child. These are our clinical opinions and perspectives. We recommend finding a licensed speech pathologist or music therapist to guide you on ideas for your child. And with that, welcome to the podcast, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
All right, so I read a little bit of your bio, but I want to hear in your words. Tell us how you got to where you are today, especially with those endpoints being music, literacy, and GLPs.
Absolutely. So it starts, when I'm 5 years old and I start playing violin and piano, taking lessons. And that was kind of my first exposure to music. My mom was a piano teacher, so I couldn't really escape those piano lessons. That was definitely a must. And then, so yeah, music's always going on in my house, right? I'm listening to it. I'm practicing it. I'm hearing my mom's piano students. And then, we would even just make up songs all the time. Like, it's time to get the dishes out, like we're just constantly creating music. And so that was just something I always knew. And then in high school, my first exposure to a singable book was when I worked at the library because I love books. I worked at the library all through high school, and I worked with the children's librarian. And it was 2000. And so the book, The Jazz Fly, had just come out. And she uses it in her summer story hour. And I was like, what is this magic? Like, you're singing this book, and these kids, like 50, 60 kids, are like, really paying attention, really buying in. And I thought, okay, like, I'm tucking this in the back of my brain for later. Like, this is very interesting to me. And then in college, I didn't want to major in music because I'd done music my whole life. I wanted to do orchestra and violin, but I was really interested in elementary education. And then I heard about communication disorders, and I was like, oh, well, this is something very fascinating to me. Like, I love learning about language and speech. So I graduated, and then I heard about music therapy. And then I was like, well, now I can use all of these special interests of mine as a music therapist. And so I went to University of Iowa and did it's called an equivalency and master's program. since I didn't have an undergrad in music therapy, I had to do an undergrad at the same time as I was doing my master's. And so, I mean, it was a lot, but it was, again, like something I was so passionate about and I felt so grateful to be able to do. And at the same time, another thread of like language, throughout all this is that I was working in the music perception lab at the University of Iowa hospital with Dr. Gefeller, and she was leading research on cochlear implants and language perception. And so I was her research assistant, and I was like, this is so cool, and there's so much here. And so again, like I continued learning about how language and music intersect. And then, yeah, and then I went and did my internship. You have to do a 6-month internship. I did it at the Austin State Hospital in Texas. And then I started my private practice. And there, I contracted with a lot of different places. I worked in home. I contracted with the school district down there as a music therapist, but then I was also doing groups at a place called Language and Movement. And here they paid me to come in and do music therapy groups and have their speech language pathologists and their occupational therapists come in, and we collaborated and we co-treated. And I was like, this is the dream. Like, this is the dream. And you could just see how all of us coming together was great for the child. Like, they were really thriving with all of us being able to work together. So that was a really special time. And then I moved to St. Louis and worked in the special education setting here. And I worked K through 21 years old. I had about 12 schools I would drive around to. And yeah, I worked with a lot of GLPs and learned a lot. And it was something that I just recently, learned the term for. I feel like in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, I was like, oh, well, this is the name for what I have, seen. And it was so great to really understand and start to really dive into that and learn more about that. And I feel very fortunate. I work with at SSD, I worked with Laura Hayes, who is a really amazing resource too for, I'm sure lots of people here know her name, but she's really a great resource for learning about GLPs, and she would do presentations for the music therapists, and we got to learn more that way. So yeah, and then it led me to the Singable Book Club, where I can kind of use all that experience with language and music therapy and really kind of share the books and materials and visuals and songs that I've used these past, since 2011 in one space. And it's something that is so fun.
So what is a singable book? What's a singable story?
Okay, so in short, I call it, books that use rhythm and rhyme to have a good time. But obviously, there's so much more than that. I just, kind of had to make it musical. But essentially, a singable story is a children's book that is musical in nature. Whether it is sung or chanted, it has some musical aspect to it. So it doesn't, I call them singable books or singable stories, but you can, they don't have to be sung. They can be chanted. So that is kind of, for caregivers or folks who are not as comfortable singing, I want them to know, like, hey, you don't have to sing it. Like, it is just musical, inherently musical, and you can chant it. But then these single stories, single books, they can take a lot of iterations. So they can be set to a familiar melody or a melody that you create. So many single books that you might think of right away are, songs that are the exact song lyrics. So like, Kenny Loggins' Footloose, that's a children's single book, and it has all of his lyrics, and then it's put to children's illustrations. Or like Pharrell's Happy is a single book, and it's his song. Or you can have a book that is piggybacked off of a familiar melody. So we all know the song Going on a Bear Hunt. That's a single book, but then there's also another single book called We're Going on a Leaf Hunt. So it's kind of piggybacking off of that familiar melody. And then, like I said, like a lot of chanting books, Who Stole the Cookie from the Cookie Jar? You're not really singing that, you're chanting it. And then my last kind of example of a singable book would be, I also have these books that I may read a few of the pages without singing until I get to a particular repeated line. So this line comes up often. And so I sing that one line, and that becomes kind of like a touch point for the student. They kind of like grabs their attention again, and then we're reading the pages, and then we sing that line again, which is also great for GLPs when you have chunks of language or a line that they can hold on to and look forward to. And I was going to show an example, and for those who are just listening, I'll tell you about this book. It's called This Is How We Play, and it's called A Celebration of Disability and Adaptation. And this is an example of a book that I read. It's rhyming, but then there's a line that happens every so often that I sing. So it's with love and adaptation, this is how we play. And so kind of a breath at the end, and kind of that message at the end of each page. And like I said, kind of use it as a touch point. So there are a lot of different ways a singable book can happen, and those are kind of like the main ways when I think of a singable book.
I love that I got to hear you sing. Please feel free to do that again.
Thank
For
you.
those of you who are here live, I just put the link to that book in the chat. And if you're not listening live, the resource will be linked in the show notes. I wanted to go back, and because I like to take what I hear and make a list. So I was listing, one of the ways is a song adapted into a book, like Happy. One is the piggybacked melodies, right? One was, you said, like a touch point, like spoken until that song refrain or touch point. Was there another one that I missed?
Then just like some that are just chanted. So like going on a bear hunt, the Who Stole the Cookies from the Cookie
Yeah.
Jar.
Great. Okay. So song adapted into book, piggybacked, chanted, and then the idea that I love the word touch point for that. I was thinking about the chanting is great for parents, teachers, therapists who don't like to sing or can't sing with love or with respect, can't sing. And that's great for like giving them something that feels more comfortable, but also for GLPs who are really like music, like perceptually talented with music or have perfect pitch. That's probably a good place to start too, so we don't lose them and get the no or the all done.
100%, 100%. Because it can feel so abrasive if you have perfect pitch and then someone is not hitting that pitch. So yes, absolutely. That's another good reason to chant the book.
Abrasive is I like that. That's a really good way of describing it when you use that word.
Yeah, to me, it's almost like when I think of perfect pitch, it's almost a
Yeah,
sensory experience, right? Like
I love
almost like that's what when I, feel something off pitch or something, like it feels like your whole sensory system feels like, oh no, this has been rubbed the wrong way and it feels awful. Is the best
yeah.
way I can describe it.
Well, there's the theory of enhanced perceptual capacity when it comes to autism, and let me find a good paper for that. But there's basically what it is an enhanced perceptual capacity, sensory information that's considered more low level, low grade, that a neurotypical brain and body might filter out as irrelevant. A neurodivergent body, especially an autistic brain and body, are going to say, actually, that's really worth paying attention to, maybe to a level that it's really distressing, uncomfortable, and unable to filter it out. Which is amazing in some ways, right? Some areas in like quality of life is enhanced because of that. But if, like something's supposed to be 440 hertz and it comes in at, 438, it's going to be really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Let me get a paper in the chat for you guys about enhanced perceptual capacity at some point, but I do want to move on to I want to talk about some of the rationale. I love hearing ideas for therapy, but I also love to talk about the why. So let's dive into some of the reasons why music can be so helpful for language goals with a GLP.
Yes. So the first two things that stand out to me, the first one being like the rhyme and the rhythmic aspects of music and of a single book, because it has that structure and that predictability that many autistic kids crave and find comforting, right? So rhythm is a very good place to start for regulation. I mean, you can't learn until you regulate, right? So like rhythm really helps our brains regulate through entrainment. And when you're reading, you can also, implement the ISO principle. So like if with music, it's very, I don't know if you're familiar with the term ISO principle or not.
No, yeah.
So it's basically, you're starting where they're at rhythmically, And with music, you have the ability to like slow down or, play with tempo, right? So you can start where they're at rhythmically and then gradually take them down to the tempo where they need to be for effective attentional control, which has been shown to it's no more than 120 beats per minute. So that's yeah. So like that rhythm of the book and the music is huge for like the attention piece and the structure predictability, but also for regulation. And then the second thing, I mean, I have about 8 things I could talk about this, but these are the first two that come to mind. The second one being like an important aspect of singable books is that they are repetitive in nature. Like music is naturally repetitive. So that makes it a very natural way to practice goals over and over without it feeling like work. Because I would have students like, if they think it's going to be work, then like that's it. Like we're not gonna no participate. But when it's a song, it's just naturally set up to do, usually it's a verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, 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 right? So like you're used to a song having so much repetition. And so it's that very natural, predictable format. So you have all these opportunities to practice core words or like a chunk of words, a phrase on your AAC device over and over. And it feels less like drills and more like fun and play when it's naturally happening in the book or in the music. So yeah, I love that it gives that chance to repeat and practice, language patterns and speech sounds and vocabulary. So I think the repetition part of it is very important.
I like the way that I loved everything you just said, like
Thanks.
downloading all of it. Yeah, the repetition side of it, that really stands out. Yeah, kind of comparing that to drills in a way. Like there's so many more opportunities because I don't like to think about in my work, like, oh, we're going to drill this today, right?
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
it's a different way of looking at opportunities, repetition there. I like that. It's a cool reframe there. When it comes to rhythm, I think about rhythm often. I'm glad you brought up entrainment. I mean, you're a music therapist. Of course, you're going to bring up entrainment. But there is a paper I wanted to share with everyone that I've referenced before. It's a 2024 paper called Rhythm and Music for Promoting Sensory Motor Organization in Autism, Broader Implications for Outcomes. So I'm going to put that citation here in the chat for you guys. It will definitely be in the show notes as well. But there was a quote I pulled out about rhythm, because I feel like when I talk about rhythm and time, people are often, because we listen to music every day. It's ubiquitous. We take it for granted. So it's really cool to think about, wait a minute, what am I actually experiencing? So the quote is, start quote, rhythm defined as a structured pattern of sound organized in time. I love that. A structured pattern of sound organized in time aids in integrating either incoming information or planned actions into coherent, manageable units. Rhythm is the primary organizing factor of music and plays an important role in timing and pacing of motor movement individuals engaging in physical rehabilitation. So this was about movement. It was a paper looking at sensory motor movement, but we know that that's another area that is really significant and important with this population. But I just really like that quote, thinking about a pattern of sound organized in time.
I love that. Yes.
Who needs that? GLPs. Who benefits from
Yeah.
that? Exactly.
100%. No, that
And
is
then
perfect.
and then there was another one that pulled from that paper was they also found that children with developmental disabilities have demonstrated difficulties with rhythmic entrainment and/or timing. These motor timing differences have been shown to be predictive of non-musical skill delays, including language. And so you see that entrainment itself can be challenging, that social timing, and that could also be predictive of the language challenges as well. So all of this gets woven in together, which then I think opens up a really good door of how can we use music to help with all of this tangled up.
And what did you say at the beginning about it being the vehicle? Can you say your quote again about?
Music is the vehicle, language is the passenger.
Yeah. Oh, language of yeah, that's so great. That is a perfect way to describe it.
Yeah, it's all about like container and contents. And I
Mhm.
think about like spoken language, there's plenty of patterns within it, but they're a lot more complex.
Mhm.
But musically, the math of music, the containers are going to be a little bit more regular, unless we're talking about experimental stuff. But there's going to be a lot more regularities
Yeah,
perceptually,
predictability. Yep.
right? Easier to hook onto.
Yeah.
I want to hear some examples. So I want to hear about kids that you've worked with, examples of, there's sessions in our that stand out forever. There's kids that stand out forever. Do any come to mind about Singable books?
Yeah. And I will say there was one moment, it's not directly related to a Singable book. It gave me ideas for how to use Singable books later.
Yeah.
Uh, but there was a student I worked with who's primarily nonverbal, non-speaking, excuse me. I haven't made that mistake, sorry. Non-speaking. And then, so he would carry around his AAC device mostly. But it was a day that was really difficult. He was dysregulated because there was a substitute, right? So his schedule was off. He didn't know this person. And I came to pick him up for music therapy, and he wasn't in the classroom because he was in the hallway because he had dropped and he was just very dysregulated. And so I came to see him, and he was crying, he was upset, and he looks up at me and he sees someone he knows, he sees someone he trusts. Music therapy is always a really wonderful, time, like a very safe place for him. So he sees me and he goes, "Out came the sun." And I go, "Oh, wow. That
Come
was
on.
so deep." Like,
Come on.
oh man, like I could cry about it right now because I was like, oh, he was so upset. And then he saw somebody he knew and he trusted. And it's like, and then to think of the itsy bitsy spider where out came the sun and dried up all the rain and everything was okay again. Like, and so that like really like, I don't know, brought it home to me like, wow, there's just so much there. And like, what a beautiful way to put that. And so then I was like, well, there's just, if that's maybe a nursery rhyme he likes or he really adheres to, and we can make our own single book with the itsy
Yeah.
bitsy spider, and then we can go from there. And if he really liked the phrase, um, out came the sun, then you can use that phrase like we would play with it and be like, out came the, and then he would insert a dinosaur, like we'd have a flap and we'd open it up and be like, out came the dinosaur, out came the, so like I found a special interest of him with this song, and he was using it as a way to, explain his emotions at the time. And so I was like, okay, this is how we can then maybe use a single book to use that song that he liked. So,
I mean, that has to be the title of your memoir. Out
oh,
came the sun. That has to be it. Wow,
well,
that's something I say a lot. That's like, I'll say like, that's so GLP. Like what you just said is so GLP of the emotional context of that song
hmm
mapped well onto his experience. And literally looking up, like out came the sun, that map, there's like spatial emotional mapping that happens.
yeah.
Um,
So
through
that
the,
like, oh, sorry.
yeah, no, no, go.
Yeah. So I think that was one of the really like moments where I was like, okay, this is something that I, I really like know, because at that time, like there wasn't even anyone saying he was a Gestalt language processor. I was like, okay, well, this is definitely like saying like this is such a musical phrase he's using and using it in this context. So yeah, that's I think the first anecdote that comes out in my mind. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah.
And I think I want to know what the process that might have been very fast for you, but I want to say it out loud for people is he said this to you or saying this to you. You didn't write it off or be like, that was weird. That was random. You noticed it was important as communication. You thought or you dug a little bit deeper into what that might have meant. But you didn't just stop there. That's like the validation of it. But then you said, okay, I'm going to actually take this and have this be a vehicle and a place of connection and a therapeutic opportunity. We take this line and do that slot and frame, that mitigation work. And so you can see how just this moment that could have been missed of a lyric being sung to you, you did some detective work, some digging, and then you brought it into therapeutic work and you just pulled it outward and made something that could have been very small, very, very big. And so that's a process that if you're listening and you're wondering about, okay, but how do I do this? How do I start to engage with GLPs? Is if you hear a script or you hear echolalia, don't write it off right away or at all. Think about what could be underneath this and how can you pull that into your work, stretch it, iterate upon it. So I just wanted to map all that out, what happened probably very naturally for you to delineate that.
Yeah, and then exactly, it's just like just that validation. I mean, you brought up validating, like, yeah, that is a big point of connection. And for him to be like, okay, you understood that, you understood where I was going with that. And I think because I said, regulation is huge for learning, but like rapport building is huge for learning. Like you need that to have them feel safe and validated. So yes. Um, and then I was going to say too, I have some other, if you want to go into like other rationales for using um, singable stories, because when you're thinking about um, like basically like a kid with different sensory needs or ways like modes of learning, I'm just thinking like, okay, so a single book, you have, it's multisensory. You have the visual aspect of it, right? So you have the book illustrations, but then you can also make, if I needed to adapt an illustration or make my own that's bigger or make it a high contrast illustration to go with it. But you have that aspect, which helps keep attention. You have the oral aspect, like the reading, the singing of the book. You can use the emphasis, the volume, the sound effects. I like a good onomatopoeia, rhythm of speech, speed of delivery, those pitch differences, all that you can use in a singable book. But then, another, mode of learning would be like the movement, the kinesthetic learners, right? So these books are very conducive to using body percussion and dancing and parachutes. And I've used stretchy bands with single books, right? It's a little tricky to hold a book while you do it. Like sometimes I, put a PowerPoint up or something with the book pages. But you can use scarves to dance while you read Over the Rainbow. Because I want folks to know too that I don't expect kids to just like sit and listen to the story. Like move. Like if that's the way you learn is to move while I'm reading, like here's scarves, let's dance. Like let's put the scarf up to the light and look at the scarf like through the light as we do Over the Rainbow, and or like What a Wonderful World. That's a really great one to use with different colorful scarves. A lot of times I would also like, I could print out pictures. I don't know if you know the song Rattling Bog. It's like an Irish song I use sometimes around St. Patrick's Day. And there's a really great singable book through, I think it's Barefoot Books has one. But it's basically a cumulative song. That's a really hard word for me to say, cumulative. And it builds on this page and then it adds this like in the tree there was a bird, a rare bird, a rattling bird, a bird in the tree, and a bird in the nest, and an egg in the tree, like that. It keeps
I've heard
building.
versions of this. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So then I would print out a picture of a nest and I print out a picture of a bird and you could put them all around the room. And as you're reading it, you run from one picture to the next. So you're kind of making all these connections. Like you have to be listening. I don't want to use the wrong term. Is it auditory? Like discrimination is like that's more for speech sounds. But
It's
like
definitely involved. Yeah.
okay, so like if you're listening to me say this word, and then you have to then look and process and find the picture and then run to it and then go to the next one. And it's like a fun game, but there's so much learning and executive functioning that's
Yeah.
happening because you're having to remember the steps and the sequencing. So I really like that. That's another way to use single books is like movement. You can use it with cross body, like cross lateral movements, so you can get the two sides of the brain talking to each other. A good one for that is, I don't know if when I was in recess in the 90s, we did a lot of those hand clapping games like Miss Mary Mac, right? And what you're doing the whole time is crossing the midline. And so there's a singable book called Miss Mary Mac, and it's that rhyme that we would use in recess, but it like is you can do the hand clapping with it, and it's a good way to get the body ready for learning. So yeah, I would say like having all of that the multisensory aspects of and the multimodal learning of the with the single books, like that is a huge way to work on so many different goals in so many areas. So that's one thing I was excited.
As you're saying that, I'm imagining kind of that same, and sorry for those of you who are listening later and not seeing this live, I'm doing this gesture where my hands are together and I'm doing this pulling out motion and like pulling my hands outward, like growing. And that's again what I'm hearing here, kind of with that example of out came the sun. You started with something small and made it much bigger. That's the same thing I'm here with the book. It's this, this thing you hold in your hand, just like a small book. But then through the methods you're talking about, you're stretching it outward, you're pulling it larger into all these different multisensory channels. And it sounds very theatrical too. You're taking this moment, you're taking this experience, you're also taking a template of information and iterating upon it in all these really interesting ways. And when I think about Gestalt processors, who there's such the special interest trends that we see of like brown bear, hungry caterpillar, chicka chicka boom boom. I mean, bear hunt. I have a kid who's in a bear hunt moment right now. And I didn't realize we were kind of doing a singable book experience, but we make this book come alive in their living room every week with we got blue magnetiles for the river. We got green magnetiles for the grass, or we've got Play-Doh where we're setting up the different stations. So we're trying to take the book off the page.
That's right.
And just making it big, big, big. And then it's almost like the child becomes one of the characters in it.
Ooh, I love that. Yes. They can fully immerse themselves in it, right? Like surround
Right.
themselves with all the aspects. That is a really great way to think of that and use those books and extend those activities and scaffold them. And there's so many ways you can go with it. But yeah, immerse themselves in it is
Right. Yeah. So I guess that could be a lens of like, what could I do so that my client feels like they are a character in this book? Because I have a client where like, if he could be at the top of the coconut tree in Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, he would live there. So what could we be doing with a singable or chantable book to make that happen for that kid? I'll never forget. You're thinking back to like recess. I'm thinking back to a program I was in. I guess it was like it was a preschool program. Do you know the book The Mitten?
Oh, yes. Yeah, of course.
What the teacher did, and it says a lot that, and I don't have a very good memory that I remembered this. It says a lot about the activity. So all of us were assigned to be a different animal, and they put a giant blanket over a table. And as we read the book, we would take turns as the animals going in and under. So we're reenacting it. And it stuck with me so much because I was inside the story. And so, if I'm talking about that, at least 25 years later, it made such an impact and a template on me. Like, imagine what might be possible for a GLP, for sense making, for making sense of and getting templates for what they're experiencing in their life.
That's right. It's not just words on page, like these are real life experiences. Yeah, exactly. How do you, like you said, pull that out of the book and then make it real life? And how can we use these books to then, work on something that like activities of daily living or like how you can incorporate, like there's one, I have a book, one of my favorites is, Waking Up is Hard to Do. It's that Neil Sedaka, Breaking Up is Hard to Do.
Yeah.
And but it's a really good one for talking about morning routines. And then, so like, I would, this would be an idea I would give to caregivers at home to use. And we'd make like a little chart. Like, I don't mind like taking a book and putting Velcro on it or taping it, whatever it needs to do. Like, I incorporate the visual inside. And then we would do the routine that they would do at home and talk about the routine that the alligator does in the book. It's super cute too. It's like, you slept all night, now it's morning time. Boom, 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 boom. That's the time to rise and shine. Boom, 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 boom. Like, I like to add a little rhythmic, sounds to it. And then don't you cry and don't be blue. Waking up is hard to do. And then it talks about him brushing his teeth and getting dressed and going downstairs for breakfast. So that was a really great way to make it real world for this student. Like, okay, this alligator's doing this, and this student really loved animals too. So that was another buy-in for this book, another special interest. And then how can we make it real life? How can we, move it from the page to real life?
I love that. Yeah. Pull it off the page. What could that look like? Okay. So, because you said you had at least 8 reasons, I want to make sure we get at least 7. So we got rhythm, repetition, multisensory. What else you got?
Yes. And then I I just know that there's so many reasons for it, right? But when you put words to a melody, they are just easier to recall. Like, it's so fascinating to me that these things, talking about now that's in my head, like talking about things that you remember from school. Um, my Spanish teacher in high school put all the capitals of Central and South America to a melody. And so I can still to this day remember all the capitals. I can remember all the bones of the body, the major bones of the body, because it was set to a melody. And like when you put these books and these words to a melody, it is so easier, much easier for the brain to grab that and remember that. And there's a lot of science and reasons behind it. And but just generally, music just lights up the entire brain, all these different areas of the brain. And someone who's like neurodivergent like myself, it is such an easier mode of communication for me to sing and than to speak. And it's so funny. An example too is like I can play a 20-minute piece on by memory on my violin. I could not for the life of you remember the title of that song that I just played. It's like so fascinating how the brain works. Um, so yeah, I think using the melody also, like if you use a familiar melody to the child, that helps reduce the learning load for the listener. I think it gives them that familiarity. They don't have to learn something new, and then it makes that material easier to remember. So I really love, piggybacking off a familiar melody or using a familiar melody. And if I do create a melody, then there's a lot of intentionality behind it. I'm not just like, here, this sounds like a good melody, I'm using it. Um, I look at the rhythm, I look at the mood of the book, I look at, for example, there's this book, Hi, How Are You? It's by an SLP, Holly. I'm not sure exactly how to say her last name, so I apologize. Um, but it's a great book and check it out. But she had this rhyming, it has a rhyming theme to it. And I thought, well, okay, what kind of melody should I put to it? Well, it's a book, for younger, developing, words for toddlers. And so I thought, okay, Twinkle Twinkle would be a good one. They're familiar with it. The caregivers are familiar with it. So I set it to the first part of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And then when I created my own original melody to go with it, I thought, this is about these books, or this book is about a, conversation. So it's like, it says, I see a cow. Hi, how are you? The cow eats grass, the cow says moo. So I thought if this is a conversation, I want to have that melodic, contour. I want to have that intonation going up for a question. I want it to go down. So it's, I see a cow. Hi, how are you? The cow eats grass. The cow says moo. So we're going up, 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 and then we're going down, down, down. So I just want folks to know there's a, when you're choosing a melody, it's really important to think about why you are choosing that melody you're using.
I love that. You're like mood matching. You're thinking about like the contour. The word contour is a big one. I love that you use that. Or kind of like the melodic arc of it. So yeah, the great idea of like questions have that rising arc at the end. So your melody going up, and then you're responding or doing that declarative, and that lands lower. I think that's really strategic. And also thinking about tempo wise, making decisions about tempo is going to be helpful too. Like, is this a line? Is this a book where quickness is going to match the mood or the context? Is a slower tempo, or how are you going to vary it throughout the story as the plot goes on?
That's right, because just by varying the tempo, that's another way to like, ooh, I heard you, like GLPs are very usually, not all, usually very perceptive of that tempo change. And so it's like, oh, that's another like, oh, I heard something different. Like I'm gonna attend, and that joint attention is just happening so much with these single books. And I do want to mention too, while I'm thinking of it, um, sometimes I don't want to use a kind of like you're saying, there's some things that might be abrasive or uncomfortable for a GLP is, with the pitch and this intonation. But another one that I found is if I'm using a book with a familiar song, let's say it's, it's a single book called Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. If it's not the exact version of the song that they originally know, then sometimes it can be, um, they don't want it. They're like, No. This is not the song I know. This is not the
Yeah.
context in which I first heard this song. This isn't the song. Like, please don't do this one. But if I piggyback off that melody and use different words, and
Yeah.
it usually works well because the tune's familiar, but the words and picture are novel and new, and it's not trying to be exactly like the version they knew. So I just want to throw
Okay.
that out there too. It's not that they're not liking the singing. It's like, no, this is out of context, and this is not the song I know.
Yeah, I think you're speaking to another concept I feel like people might be sick of me talking about, but container contents. So the melodic container is the same, but the linguistic contents change. And so it's that balance of predictability. And I love you use the word novel or novelty, exactly. And using less cognitive resources for it. It's like, okay, I know I can predict the sequence of pitches that are coming here, but I can't necessarily predict what words are going to fill in those notes. So it's this really nice balance there.
Yeah, it's exciting for them to be like, okay, where are we going with this?
Mhm.
And then another single book that I really find that a lot of GLPs really enjoy. There's two. We have time for two. We can try.
We've
So
got time. We've
okay,
got
great. Perfect. All right. So Charlie Parker played bebop. Sometimes I'll use this in the beginning as kind of a vocal warm up or like a vocal exploration because I use a lot of exaggerated intonation with it. So I'll just give you an example. Um, so Charlie Parker played bebop. So I make it really exaggerated there. Charlie Parker played saxophone. The music sounded like bebop. Never leave your cat alone. And then it has throughout the book a lot of like kind of nonsense words. Like they'll go bebop, fisk, fisk, bebop. We can kind of go off that, and then I'll have them come up with their own like basically like this is like scatting throughout the book, right? So it's lollipop, boomba boomba, bus stop, zoom zoom. So it doesn't have to be a real word even. It could be a phrase they like to say, it could be a word they like to say. We can make up a word. And that's another way that like they can incorporate what they love into the book and we can make our own, own version, which I think if the more you can incorporate special interests, but also the more you can collaborate with them and have them co-write something with you, the more buy-in you're going to have, the more engagement you're going to have. They're so proud of, helping to create this finished project. So I wanted to share that for folks. Like it's a good starting point to like not only the vocal warm up and the exaggeration and the fun words in it, but then take that and then make your own version with the words they want to use. And it's just super fun. Again, the rapport building that happens with that one makes me really happy too.
You kind of answered my question there, but I think because I work from a very silly perspective, but I think a question that sometimes can come up is like, okay, well, you're just working on silly sound effects. Like, how is that going to help? So like, how would you answer that question of like, okay, bzz, bzz, viva, what does that have to do with talking? How is that going to help my kid?
Okay, yes, the great question. So number one, we've got the engagement, we got the joint attention, we've got their interest. So from there, I mean, it could also be we're working on, bilabial sounds with the bebop, we can practice that in a very natural, fun context. But we're also, it's about like a give and take too. We're working on social skills. Like, what are you going to say? Then I'm going to say this, or I'm going to do the like you say it and I copy you and back and forth. So it's a give and take, kind of like a conversation, right? So then we can take that framework and move into conversations later. So like it may not be like, hi, how are you? What's up today? But like I'll be like bee bop and they'll be like Zumba Zumba, it's the back and forth. So that's the beginning stages of having a conversation and building that framework.
And if the buy-in, if the window that gets a kid thinking about wanting to imitate sounds is bebop, then great. We've
Yeah.
got that window. Whereas maybe like the list of common early words that start with B is not of interest to them. That's how we're gonna like get a foot in the door. That as you were speaking, you reminded me of it was that same paper from before about rhythm. This idea of when it comes to just like regular spoken language modeling, the timing can be really unpredictable and fast. It might make it hard to know exactly when to jump in and to imitate someone. which if you're using that book as a template, it's going to be more predictable for the kid to know when to jump in, imitate. Also with music, because the metrical regularity that's often present, there's going to be a priming of the motor system too. You're hearing that da da dee da. Also, amazing octave you hit in there. So good. But there's a priming of the motor system happening there, which hopefully would have really nice feed forward interactions or effects on the oral musculature to be able to imitate, to be able to produce those sounds. And a steadiness of tempo too. If you're engaging the book with them with a pretty regular or steady tempo, it's kind of almost like counting them in to what's about to come. And speech alone doesn't necessarily have enough predictability for kind of that lead in, unless you're doing like a really common verbal routine, like ready, set. But where you're talking about the musical cueing or the theatrical cueing is going to help their body and their brain know what to do next.
That's right. And it's kind of like that call and response that happens in the blues song, like, you have so many bars that you bar blues before it's the next person's turn, and you just feel that. And that works really well too with, it's kind of a side note with, I worked with someone who had a cerebral hemorrhage, and when he was an 80-year-old gentleman. And, I would use that tool where it was like, he loved these old country cowboy songs, and I would find them and I would sing, I don't know, I'm blanking. Oh, like, hey, good. And then he would say, looking. And he, like it just came out naturally to want to finish that phrasing. What you got cooking, and the brain just wants to naturally resolve it. And so that's something also really great about music is that we have these expectations in music and you want to have that resolve. And so that's a great way to get the language out.
And I use that with an older client I have. I have a 20-year-old client. We're doing songwriting as our modality for speech language therapy, which I love because I'm like, I've been writing songs since I was 9, and I'm like, finally, I've got a client where we can do this together.
Awesome.
But I'll use kind of that lead in for generating a final word for the rhyme. Because, with so many of my other clients, it's you leave off the last word where you both know what it's going to be. It's so cool. And she's a GLP too.
Yep.
She'll have written, like, let's say we're doing a rhyme scheme, A, B, B. She's written that first line, and then I'll chant or I'll sing what she's got, like da 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 dee, da 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 da, and I'll let it hang.
Yes.
If I had just asked her, what do you want that final word to be? I don't know, but da 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 da, and she'll just go Z. It's so cool to get that rhythm going. And it's that counting in. And then suddenly the thing that was, I don't know, is, yeah, I've got it. So cool.
It is so cool. And there's so much happening like that with that improv, like just seeing the MRI images of someone they have had, I think it was in California, there was a study with different like improv comedians, but then also musicians who are improvs.
Yeah.
And they were like playing, improvising while in an MRI and just seeing like even like different aspects of the brain just like lighting up that you wouldn't expect. And so there's something happening with improvisation and in the moment kind of things like what you're saying there that is just like the brain loves. It's so neat.
I am gonna find this paper. I'm gonna find it for everyone while we're talking. Are there any other reasons on your list we want to talk about? Or did we hit
I would
all of
just say, I think the final two are just kind of like small reasons
them?
why
Okay.
I also love Singable books would be they're low cost. Like you can go to the public library and check out a Singable book for free. I think in this day and age, like everything's so expensive and it's like, I used to, especially with music instruments, like it's so expensive and so well worth it and it's a good investment. But when I can find something like so magical like a Singable book and have it be free and like libraries and librarians are national treasures and I love them so much. And so like utilizing the public library, like get these books for free and use them that way. And then there might be traveling SLPs out there who also understand this is like having something that's so portable makes a huge difference. So, I had a car full of objects and props and instruments, and it's just nice too when you can have an item that is lightweight and like saves your back. Like those are like just like asides reasons why I also love Singable books.
And we had a really nice comment here from Elaine. Thank you, Elaine. She said, if you work in a school, it's good to check with the music teacher in the school and get their version for some of these familiar folk songs, and they may have some of the books already. That's good for also not carting as much stuff around. She continues, these are all great ideas, and many music teachers will really support your SLP if they know what you're looking for.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. That's the great utilizing those the teachers and the music teachers. Like that is such a great idea too, because they are such a wealth of knowledge and they have so many these singable books. And I follow a lot of music teachers on Instagram, and it's so neat to see how they use these books in their in music classroom. And then you can, yeah, use what the student is learning there and incorporate it in your sessions. And yeah, it's a win-win.
I think this is a good time for those of you who are attending live. If you're thinking of a client or a child for whom this might be helpful, and you want to throw in a question about them or maybe a book they might like, we want to make sure we have some time at the end to maybe noodle through like a case idea or answer some questions. So put them in there. We might pick one or two to address. While you guys are thinking of potential questions, Rachel, I'm thinking about some maybe challenges with books that could come up. So I have had a couple clients over the years where their relationship with their favorite book is really like interesting, like pulling out the pages, taping them back together, or maybe kids who do a lot of like book and page ripping. So for examples like that, I'm trying to think, are there like modifications of using the actual book?
Yes. So I have, let's see here. It was with my, one of the single books I really like is called 10 on the Sled. You know, 10
Okay.
on the sled and the caribou said, flip over, slide over. And so I would just have, I had a picture because I did have someone, he was just really interested in the book and he like, yeah, would grab the book or rip the pages. And so I had this version that he could hold and you see how like it's laminated.
Yeah.
Um, and I would have a because I have to be protective of copyright, right? So I'm not copying the pages of the book.
Oh,
That's something to think about because I was like, oh, I could just laminate each of the pictures of the book. And I was like, I don't want to do that because that seems like it's a copyright violation. But
yeah.
I could do pictures of something that they could hold on to. So like who fell out, the seal or the bird, and say we could do like the WH questions with this. And this is something that is laminated and hard and like, like if it does get ripped or something, like we can just, recycle it. But that was one way that he could hold on to something. Um, and then I could sing the book. So that's one way to do that. But yeah, I would say, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, you also mentioned using a projector earlier too. I
Yes.
just remembered like projecting it up on the wall.
Correct. There's a because I had a lot of these slideshows made. There was during COVID a time when they allowed to have people read books like full books on YouTube and stuff. And so we could have, I would put it on mute and we could have like the book on there, or I could take screenshots and then go from there and have it on the presentation on the board. And then that gave me more the freedom to use that stretchy band or to use the parachute, and then go through the slides on the board that way. And so, but I don't use that one as much anymore because again, protection of the copyright, but that was a certain time when it was like it was still okay to use these books,
Interesting. Okay. I
Yeah,
didn't
and yeah,
realize
it
there
is.
was,
There's so much
yeah.
about copyright law with these books, but if they're used in the educational sense, I think there's a little bit more leeway.
Okay.
But then I was going to also say too, there's other ways to incorporate like props and visuals if they are looking for something to hold or do while you're reading the book. Like I said, like I love it when kids are moving around while I'm reading, like that's the way they're learning. But I have a whole bunch of sensory bins that are related. Like I have to different single books, like all my, Halloween themed or fall themed single books. I have a fall themed sensory bin that they can go through while we're reading the book. And then we can point out things in the sensory bin, like instead of saying like what do you see, like I kind of because I have to be careful with the pronouns with GLPs, with then
Yeah. Yeah.
then they'll say you instead of I, it's difficult. So we'll say like um ooh, we see a bird, or we see, you know, kind of change it that way. So it's another way to kind of bring in what you have with the book into the sensory bend that they're, you know, engaged in, and you kind of make it more real life that way too. I do want to mention another one of my favorite single books is Trashy Town.
Okay.
I know, right? It's about this garbage man who goes and collects garbage, and it's great for like the core words, you know, stop, yes, and no. It's a really so it's like Mr. Gilly, trash man, goes around the town. Stop. There are trash cans by the school. Mr. Gilly picks up the cans into the truck, and then you say, dump it in, smash it down, drive around the trashy town. Is the trash truck full yet? No. Mr. Gilly drives on. You go to the end where the trash truck is full. But then I stole this from my daughter. It's a little trash, you know, Fisher Price truck. But then I made the visuals of all the places that Mr. Gilly goes to empty the trash. Like he goes to the school. Okay, we're going to empty the trash into the
Awesome.
trash can in the trash bin, and then the fire truck, you know, or fire station, and we empty the trash into the truck that way. And so that's something also like we can be doing while we have the book, and um, yeah, increasing that engagement. So
You're
I probably went
inspiring me. You're inspiring me so much right now. Oh my gosh.
good.
And it just keeps coming back to like the book is this container. And it's not just, you know, I don't know how many inches wide, but it's not just the size of the book. It can become so big. Again,
Yeah.
big enough to almost live inside. I mean, you've got me, you've got me rethinking a lot of like my relationship with these books and what I want to do with them now. My brain is buzzing.
Great. That makes me
Um,
so happy to hear.
oh,
And I
I'm
oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I wish you were in Baltimore because I would have
It's
you
fun.
work with all my clients.
I would love to like co-treat with you. I think that'd be
Yeah,
so fun.
be too much
Um,
fun. We'd be harmonizing.
yes, yes. And I was going to say too, another way to kind of extend um, the book activity at the end, some of my students were working on like story element goals or sequencing the events of the story. So then you can kind of come up with songs that go with like have one song that you use at the end of each book. So
Okay.
I would have this vocabulary song that I really loved about story elements. It'd be like plot, character, conflict, theme, setting. Yes, these are the five things that you're going to be needing when you're reading or writing a short story that's mad exciting. And so then we'd use that after each one.
Yeah.
And so that became kind of a touch point too, right? Like, okay, well, I know that they'd be like, okay, I know at the end of this book, we are going to do this song. So I'm thinking about these elements during the book and how to insert into the song after we read the book. Um, or I had a song that was, it's very simple. Sometimes the most simple songs are the best
Yeah,
songs. I
for
think
sure.
don't get too complicated, keep
Don't
it
overthink it.
simple.
Yep.
So it was called I Have a Story. And so after we read the book, then I'd have three different events that happened in the book, and I'd mix them up. And I would say, you know, I have a story. Tell me what you see. Put them in order. One, two, and three. Boom, boom. And so then just having that would give them motivation to do it. Because if I said, put these events in order, you know, and be like, oh, no, no, this sounds like work. You're giving me a task to do. I was like,
Yeah.
no, let's incorporate it in a song, and it's a fun activity, and very motivated to put those events in order. So
Well, I gotta up my game.
no.
No, like in the best. This is so inspiring. I'm literally like, wait a minute. I could be doing so much cooler stuff in this. That's really, I love this. We're coming towards the end. Someone asked a really nice question. And I think speaking to those of like being in schools, supportive for teachers, when it comes to academic content, especially we're thinking about IEPs, right? How do we tailor this
Yes.
back to the curriculum? Any suggestions off the top of your head for songs related to academics, curriculum? Lori mentioned like Planet Song, but what comes to
Oh, a
mind?
planet song.
Yeah.
Um, there is a really good space song. Excuse me, I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you share my email. If they email me, I'm happy to come up with a list of things. Like
Yeah,
sometimes it's hard for me to think in the moment. Um,
totally.
but I do know that like, yes, for academic goals, IEP goals, um, sequencing is a really big IEP goal I would see all the time. So like those little old lady who swallowed a clover books, those are very much a sequencing book, right? I kind of had a love-hate relationship with those books because it's like, oh, okay, another one of these, another one of these, but the kids would love them. So it's like, if they love it, I will do it. Absolutely. Um, like I already mentioned the, excuse me, core words and phrases. That was also a big goal I would see. WH questions. WH questions can be so hard. They're such a
Yeah.
tricky concept. But we can use a lot of like who, where, why, what questions with these books. Like, where, oh, where has my little dog gone? That's a singable book. There's a printed version of that. And then we could like be like, where's the dog? Where's, where do you go? Or you work it on prepositions. Like, is the dog on the doghouse? The dog is under the doghouse. The dog is in the doghouse. You can work on cause and effect. Cows That Type is a really good book for that. Like, the cows did this and then this happened. And that's one that you can use rhythm sticks with.
Okay.
Like click, clack, moo,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
clickety,
yeah.
clack, moo. Um, but I can keep going. I also want to be respectful of time, but
Sure.
there's a ton more of like the pre-academic skills, like Pete the cat and the color of his shoes and sorting goals with the leaf hunt, that kind of thing.
I mean, I gotta have you back on. This is you're giving so many great ideas, and your enthusiasm with it is just like, I'm blown away. I'm so inspired. There are a couple people in the chat who are asking where to find you. So the first place I'm going to link for everybody is about to find you at the Singable Book Club. So that link is in there. To learn more about you. It looks like you've got blog, podcast, contact information. And for people to find out what the Singable Book Club actually is, because I think that's going to answer some people's questions about where can I find more ideas, find more books, recommendations. You could probably check out that website. And then you also have an Instagram, and that's how we got connected. And I'm going to post the link to that there. Highly recommend looking into Rachel's Instagram. This has been lovely. Again, I'm feeling very inspired. I'm going to be rethinking a lot of the books that I'm using with kids and moving forward how I'm using these literacy experiences. I'm so grateful you took the time to come onto the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I feel so energized talking to you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk today. And I'm very honored to be a
Yeah.
part of this.
I'm so glad that you decided to come on. So other than the website and the Instagram, are those the places to find you, or are there anywhere else?
Yep, that's the place to go, Instagram and the website. So.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you so much to everyone who joined live this evening. We had such a great live audience participating. And I do want to say, for those of you who are here live, I want to make sure you get credit for the CEU. So again, please make sure to go over to SpeechTherapyPD.com, and you're going to complete all of the steps after this course to get credit. Make sure you do that by the end of the day. And I've